Hi, good day, everyone.
Hi, good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Yes.
Hi, good day, everyone. I hope the sound is better now. So, welcome to our 19th session titled 2020X Vision. Rev up your revenue engine to plug leaks, skyrocket sales. I'm Vishwendra Verma, founder and CEO of Growth Sutra, and I'll be your host for today's event. Today, we have gathered to explore strategies to optimize revenue engine by integrating sales, marketing, and buy insights. But before we start, let me share some housekeeping notes. Uh, so, if you are joining on LinkedIn, please introduce yourself, your name and location in the chat window. Um, During the session, if you have any questions for the speakers, or any insight, or if you like to upload insights from speakers, do share your comments in the chat window so that so as to make it more engaging. And in case if you miss out any specific segment in the session, this session is getting recorded, so you would be able to watch the replay post the session is over. No need to worry about missing out any segments in the session. If I talk about some of the sessions that we have done in past, we actually began a series on 2020X vision. Prior to that, we had a series on qualifying leads. 2020X vision was started with AI in the perspective. So we leveraged AI empowered strategies for building 2020X vision. Now we are continuing with the same theme, but we are looking at strategies which are specific to revenue. So today's session is more about revenue engine, and the subsequent session from here are going to be again about revenue growth and how various strategies can be built in order to drive revenue engine moving forward. Um, our session today is very unique. We have a distinguished panel. Today we have Dennis Roman. Let me add them while I'm talking about the speakers. And we have Stephen, who is joining us. And we also have Sanjay Prasad, who is there. So our panel is very unique today. In fact, if I can say, we have two speakers who are from marketing and two are from sales. So it's a very balanced panel where it gives us a kind of a balanced approach to discuss this interesting topic, rev up your revenue engine. So before we start, let me invite speakers to introduce themselves. Dennis, you want to begin with?
Oh, hi, everyone. Dennis Roman here. Delighted to have another opportunity to speak with you. And again, we sincerely appreciate you, the audience. We know there's a lot of competition for eyeballs, so we're delighted you're with us today. And we're looking forward to having a really practical dialogue on this subject. Sanjay, over to you.
Hey. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Vish. My name is Sanjay Prasad. I'm based out of New York. I'm responsible for sales and business across North America and Europe for TCS Banks. It's pleasure to be here. And thank you so much, Vish and Dennis.
Yeah, hi, I'm Steve Wolfcool. I'm former banker, ran a business unit, and have been in sales development for global enterprises the last 20 years in technology, such as companies Oracle and Infosys, for example. And it's a pleasure to join this group. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure to have you on board. We have a very diverse panel and with such a rich experience. So before we start, let me begin with a question to all of them. How do you define a revenue engine, and what are the essential building blocks of the revenue engine?
Well, yeah, that's the sort of question you could ask, and get a bunch of different answers. Certainly, at least functionally, we have a relatively good idea of what the components are that are used to put a revenue engine together for a technology company, especially. So there is that. There's also the softer, you can't purchase the IP, right? It's the motivation and the talent of the people who are at the command center and using the controls, because you could be easily taken down the wrong path if you don't understand what the numbers mean. So everything has to be interpreted with a certain amount of experience. So there's at least 3 or 4 parts to this thing. Sanjay, how would you answer that?
No, Dennis, I'll just take the engine metaphor itself, and which you have very nicely put together, right? So there are these parts, components, through, they call them cylinders, pistons, crankshaft, camshaft, whatever the engine is. These are the various groups within an organization that power sales, which eventually powers revenue. And then you have very nicely put in the software element, which I will try to correlate to the lubricating oil, right? It's what keeps the engine going. So how do we bring that synergy? What is that is going to keep this engine running is as critical as the engine itself. So I agree with what Dennis, what you have said. So I think we'll try to cover both those dimensions, the hard facts and the softer dimensions. Steve?
I'm a big fan, having been a banker, having a plan. Start with a plan. Just like you build an engine, you have to start with a plan and then have measurable results. Tie every employee to those KRAs to that plan. So have a strategy, have a vision, and then have a plan that provides KRAs that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Otherwise, execution becomes vague.
Right. Yeah. So that's a very diverse perspective. But I'll recommend that let's go through the session, and we are going to reveal a lot of these insights about revenue engine, which are critical to establish a concept around this engine, so as to say. So how we have done that, we have put together a content flow. And I'll just quickly set the context. And then we have Dennis, who is going to take us through the building a smarter marketing engine. Then we are going to have an expert roundtable, wherein I'm going to ask certain specific questions to Stephen and Sanjay. We'll pick their brains on some of the interesting areas around revenue engine that will give us a lot of insights. And lastly, I'm going to cover revenue engine flywheel. In short, summarizing the session that we are going to have today. If there are any questions from the audience, we are going to pick those questions as well. While we can pick those questions during the session itself, in case if we see that those on comments box. So keep sharing your questions or comments in the comment box, so that in case if we have a specific questions for the speakers, then we can ask them then and there itself. So if you look at, while we talked about revenue engine, I'd just like to throw some stats. So one of the stats that I've got is from Forrester. Companies that align people, process, and technology in sales and marketing saw 36% more revenue growth and up to 28% more profitability. And you can connect it with the insights that has been shared by the speakers. However, if you look at some of the organizations who have actually adopted revenue ops as a concept. So revenue ops is one of the framework within growth engine, within revenue engine. So if there are businesses who have adopted revenue ops, they saw 3x faster revenue growth compared to those that did not, according to Forrester. So you can see the impact that the revenue engine as a concept can provide to the growth potential of a business. But as discussed, so revenue engine can consist of all the go-to-market functions which are responsible for revenue growth, sales, marketing, and product. And the synergy between all these functional, along with buyer insights forms and a very structured format and approach to the which act as the backbone for the revenue engine. Now, if I talk about some of the frameworks which are there, so in fact there are a lot of popular frameworks which have been used by different businesses, from large enterprise companies to small mid-sized companies. So they are very diverse kind of frameworks which are kind of popular within the sales and marketing leader. So one is, of course, you might have heard about sales funnel, which is the most popular framework, and this is applicable when there's a clear sales process in its stages. Then you have inbound marketing framework that was actually made popular by HubSpot, and the focus there is mostly on inbound marketing and content creation. Third one is the account-based marketing, which is also popular with enterprise tech. And this was actually popular, this was made familiar by demand-based terminus. And the goal there is to target high-value enterprise accounts. So there's an intent to grow high-touch accounts through account-based marketing. Then you have customer value optimization. That's a framework. It was shared by Ryan Geese. And this is more in terms of having a customer centric approach with focus on long term value. So you might have heard about RFM, which is recency, frequency, and monetary value of the customer interaction. So that's all that's been covered under customer value optimization. Then you have predictable revenue framework that is actually shared by Aaron Ross in his book Predictable Revenue. So it's more for a very structured approach and scalable revenue growth. The one that I referred to earlier is the revenue operations or RevOps framework, which was popularized by Salesforce. This actually entails a complex sales process, multiple data capabilities, so on and so forth. And the last but not least is the growth hacking framework. Growth hacking is quite popular for startups who are seeking rapid growth. So while so many frameworks which are there, we might not be able to cover all these frameworks. Probably today our focus is going to be more around sales funnel, and that you'll see in our discussion and conversation. However, we might cover some of these frameworks in our subsequent sessions. So I'll talk about our next session and where we can cover some of these frameworks. But now let me invite Dennis to share his insights, especially from the perspective of building smarter marketing engines. Dennis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fish. That was very interesting. That was a good beginning. We have people on in the audience who work at enterprises, and there isn't an enterprise around who wouldn't already say, why am I going to this? Because I already have my revenue engine. So even if you have one, probably would make sense to maintain it correctly. To use the analogy that Sanjay shared with us, you got to be putting oil in, and you got to be putting the right kind of oil in order for the engine to work properly. It's a pretty good metaphor. But there's also people on here who work at startups, and they're going, what are those building blocks, and which ones do I need first, and which are second? Because there is a minimum group that has to be achieved, and then a more elaborate group that is ideal. But it's the difference between required and elective surgery. So there's different pieces and parts to this thing. And so Stephen told us we need a plan, and I couldn't agree more. And then working towards a plan on the engine. Okay, so Dennis Roman, my whole world is about sales enablement and marketing messaging through both AI and financial analysis. And just to take you through this quickly, thank you. Okay, so the marketing engine, not to take us off topic, but there's a marketing engine as well. These are representative of the variety of things that and there's more that could be included. Branding would be a perfect example, but this would be a group of activities and softwares that most of us would be pretty familiar with, and the order in which they're executed and the dimensions are left to the marketing department to figure out. But I've left strategy in yellow here because this is in my opinion, this is the biggest one, research. And I have found in my career that research is an underdeveloped muscle by an awful lot of companies. And I'm going to give a short burst on research in just a second to explain why that could have such an implication. And that's why they're both in yellow, because without the right amount of research, you're not going to get the right strategy. However, you may have a big, robust analyst program, and you may be running all kinds of campaigns, and you may be running social media, etc., and all of that is to your good. But if the strategy wasn't set correctly, you may end up in, I don't know, India instead of China, depending on where you took your first step, if you get my drift. Okay. This is a statue, a piece of Michelangelo's statue of David in Rome. And we've all seen the statue. The reason I'm sharing Michelangelo's views are this. When people complimented him on the extraordinary loveliness of his work, he was very humble and said the following. Basically, I look at a piece of stone and I find the object in the stone and I just cut away all the stuff that doesn't belong there. Now, that's a ridiculous statement, but I mean, that's how he answered the questioner. He sees the thing and all he has to do is take away the extraneous parts that don't apply. So here's one of his unfinished statues. So it kind of makes the point. He wasn't done over here because he wasn't done chipping away at all the stuff that doesn't apply. And that's my kind of take on research. Here it is another way. This is even more uncomplicated. Now, I think we all recognize what's going on here. This guy is separating wheat from chaff by using the wind. He takes the stuff, throws it up in the air. You can see the whole right side is the chaff that's blowing away because it's lighter. And the heavier stuff on the left side all falls to the ground here where he has a whole pile of wheat. No machinery. All he really did is use a couple of elements of natural law, which includes gravity and things that are heavier and lighter, etc. So he's just getting rid of the stuff he doesn't want, and he does that very simplistically by doing this. I'm almost finished, but here we go. The world's classic funnel, and I know Vish, you said we're going to talk about funnel today. Just to mention, this is not going to be a surprise to anyone. We all know the pieces of the funnel. There could be 6 lines, there could be 5, there could be 8, whatever. But my point is, if you asked anyone you know, and you could try this at your next party, to draw a funnel, every person you have ever met would draw a funnel like this. Fat at the top, narrow at the bottom. Everyone universally thinks this is a funnel. Well, I'm not saying it's not a funnel, but in my world, I'd rather do it the other way. By that, I mean, by doing the proper research about companies. I don't mean research the United States necessarily, although that's good, or research the banking sector, although that's good, or researching the West Coast versus the East Coast, although that may be good. I'm talking about researching individual companies extremely quickly to help figure out what the strategy ought to be. So now my funnel is the other way. Instead of 50 records coming out of the bottom on the left, I actually got 50 records going on the funnel on the right. And how I would do that is this. Roman's numbers, the prequel to the sales funnel, comes out like find qualified target companies. Find the relevant line of business in each of those companies. Matrix your value propositions to those firms. Now, who are the job titles in those companies that would be interested in your message? Craft relevant business messages, and the sum of the potential buyers at the institution will be greater. So, by using research at the front end, you're saving everybody a lot of time. And here's what I mean by research. And this is really a small subsegment of what I teach for a living. There's an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet. Every public company and every startup theoretically should have it. Every public company has an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet. And the income statement is what do we earn? Obviously, sorry. And then what are we worth? And the liquidity of the institution. Now, this is like boring. I hate this. Dentist, I'd rather go to the dentist and look at this stuff. Dentist, don't do this to me. So let me tell you how easy it gets just before I finish. This is an income statement. It couldn't be more boring. It's actually very accurate, but to the naked eye, this might as well be an eye chart, because unless you're steeped in accounting, this doesn't really speak to you. But that's how income statements are. They come out as a table. You know how they also come out? They come out in paragraphs. There's an income statement in paragraph form. And you could read this, and I dare anyone on the call to read these 4 paragraphs before they get to the end and want to go, I got to get a cup of coffee. I can't deal with this. So these are both income statements, highly accurate, highly regulated, all good stuff, but a pain in the neck. So Dennis, how does this relate to the guy with the chaff and the wheat? How does this relate to Michelangelo? Well, what if you could just look at an income statement like this? Here's an income statement. Here's an income statement. And now you go, well, that was easy. So this company over here, their sales are going up, but their pre-tax profit is going up faster. Huh? Well, Dennis, so what? What does that mean? That means they're getting more profit out of the same amount of sales than they were before. They are getting more efficient. They are cutting their costs. The only difference between sales and pre-tax profit are costs. So if the pink line is going up faster than the green line, that means their costs are not the problem. They may not have any problems. Okay, here's another company. Their sales are going up and the pink line's going down. Hopefully you can answer this question. What does that mean? And that means their costs are getting out of control. If the sales are going up and the pre-tax profit are going down, the only thing between sales and pre-tax profit are costs. This is a bad situation. If your stuff that you're selling helps with costs, this is the company you want to go after. Now, how about over here? Their sales are going up modestly. Pre-tax profit took a hit, and now they're starting to recover. The point is, you could look at an income statement graphically and immediately be able to see, should I be pushing revenue-generating solutions at this institution, or maybe they'd be more sympathetic to pushing cost savings solutions at this company. Very simple. That's what an income statement can do for you. It's a magic carpet to distinguishing one kind of an account from the other. I hope you like that. And this is the result I'm always trying to achieve with my classes. This is what I don't want. Everybody existed before I showed up, then I showed up, and then either they adopt the things that I'm teaching in the classes, or they go right back to doing what they were doing before, which might as well not have had the class to begin with. Hopefully you found that interesting. I'm done, Vish. Back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for sharing this information. So, if I may have a question for you, especially from the perspective of the small and mid-sized companies, they do not invest that much on data or research when they work on their revenue engine. They frankly refer more in terms of some insights either being shared by a sales team on the ground or their secondary market research. So how do you see this can fit in what you shared? This can fit in with a small and mid-sized companies.
So so there's two parts of that equation. One is the guy selling and what size institution he is or she. And you're saying in this case, Dennis, the guy selling or the gal selling is working for a smaller, maybe even a startup who can't invest in research. The other part of the equation is who are they going after? Are they going, for my benefit, let's just assume they're going after public companies. So I have a non-public company going after a public company. All right, the good news, the variety of good news, every public company has an income statement. Every public company has an income statement that's sitting on the internet that can be seen by anyone. Every public company has an income statement that's highly regulated, extremely formatted. All the terminology is exactly the same everywhere in the world. And if it's wrong, the people who sign off on the income statement can go to jail. That means the stuff is accurate. Okay, so even though the startup doesn't have money to invest, if the startup manager says to his sales, let's say I'm the manager of Stephen and Sanjay, and if they came to be complaining or bitching or whatever about their track record or whatever, I would say, show me the income statement for the customers that you're calling on. And if they don't have income statements for the customer you're calling on, you wrap them on their knuckles and you say, go back to Go, get the income statement and come back here because that's what I want to see what you're working on. So every startup has that facility to just say to their sales guys, go grab an income statement. 12 of you come back in the room. We're going to have a watershed discussion about how simplistic it is to get an income statement and look at it. So you don't need any money to do the research at that level. Nothing, zero.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Stephen, you have something to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
Stephen doesn't want to work for me. That's what he's going to say.
I'm not quitting yet, but no, I like being accountable. So Dennis, I'd love working for you. So one thing I would suggest, Dennis, to add on to what you're saying, what I have found, not just the 10K or the financial annual report for the public companies, but also their quarterly or semi-annually analyst reviews. CFOs and CEOs and other executives will go before the market analyst, and they'll do a PowerPoint presentation about their performance throughout the year and the quarter, and they'll talk about their strategy and where there are gaps in meeting that strategy or where they're achieving that. So those are publicly available. They have to make them public because if they're a publicly held company. Those are a nice summary. To Dennis's point, if you can find a summary to do that, the analyst reviews that these companies do are a great source of encapsulating both their strategy, their execution so far, and then the financials, and then the concerns that may be aware of the analysts, what concerns they're doing and what are they doing about that? What are they doing to adjust? That to me has been a great source of understanding their strategy, pain points, and also where they're succeeding, along with the numbers. So I think do what Dennis is recommending, but also add that tool. It's another tool to help you better understand the organization you're calling on.
I'll just add one part. I mean, from income statement to analyst. Now these sessions, these podcasts, webcasts, you will see more and more CEOs or decision makers who are speaking on podcasts and webcasts, and that is where they are a little more comfortable. They are much more at ease. They don't have the press. They are more casual, and they reveal more than you would imagine them to reveal in a professional analyst stock exchange setting. So track them for next Vishwendra show where a CEO is coming and talking to you. He or she will invariably end up saying things that are more valuable than you would. So just to add to what Dennis and Steve have said, there are various websites. I mean, you look at Jensen Huang. The more I learn about NVIDIA from his interview at Columbia or from his interview to the Stripe CEO day before yesterday, CEOs are talking to each other. They are getting into fireside chat. Trust me, those are gold mines to what Dennis and Steve are saying when they are the casual. Absolutely. So just wanted to add that flavor from a free information perspective. Right?
Yes, Sanjay, that's a great one. And I would another one. So I'm from the financial services industry for most of my career. In the industry, there's a peer review. So every bank who's considered a tier 2 bank in North America, they have peer reviews. So in the market, you can do a peer review. You can find that analyst report, and this is where Gartner and others come in, and Accenture and whoever do these peer reviews. That'll tell you how they're doing to their peers, and and if they're not doing great, well, then that's a problem area, right? That they need to work on in certain areas. So that's when I was a banker, we did those peer reviews every quarter, and that was a focus on how you improve where you're weak and where the peers are strong. And those peers, to Sanjay's point, they talk to each other all the time, right? And they know what each other's doing, and they basically buy from the same vendors of each other if there's success. So, if my peer is buying XYZ technology or services from a certain vendor, it's a strong chance that they'll buy from them. So, leverage that information as well as to who are they buying from and why.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. In fact, the different channels that you covered are certainly sources of information for any of the
research.
sales people who are there on the ground. So it's not only news; it's the annual reports, it's even the case studies. So there are competition who has published certain case studies that also become a source of information for sales team. But so now, for the audience, we have begun our expert roundtable, as Stephen and Sanjay have already started contributing. Yeah. So let me have another question, which is connected to previous one. So what are the critical fuel sources that power the revenue engine? You see this information, the insights research that we talked about as a key component of the fuel sources.
Steve, you want to go? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I think
go ahead.
What every sales revenue engine wants on the sales side, speaking from the sales side, is a qualified lead. And I think that is what Dennis is getting at. Qualify your leads by a better understanding their business, and that there's nothing better than having a qualified lead. So your efforts are more productive, you become more efficient. That would be my number one. Go ahead, Sanjay.
Yeah, from my perspective, I come from a very domain intensive, even though I'm part of TCS, but I'm responsible for TCS Banks, which is absolutely a domain aware. For me, as much as qualified lead and numbers is the context, right? What is, as Dennis mentioned, it's not just about the company, it's within the company, the LOB, and within the LOB, what are the priorities of the LOB with respect to the customer? So what are those LOBs and those individuals who are running that LOB? What's the context? What's the problem statement that they are facing? The reason why it is important is we need to marry their problem statement with the value of your solution, right? More often than not, in fintech world or enterprise technology world, we are very well aware of our what we call as feature functions of a product. We can speak fluently about the feature functions of the product. My question often I face when I'm dealing with new salespeople is, and I try to prepare them, mock them, is tell me what it means for me. So what? And in Wall Street, they will not hesitate a bite to say, so what? Even in a formal meeting, okay, great, you have a great product. What does it mean for me? That connection you can only establish when you know the context, right? So you may have a great solution and it has to marry to the context. And I'm telling you, if you go deeper the way Dennis is guiding us for research, you will be able to establish the context. So when you marry your features capability, feature functionality to the context of the problem, you have the mind share, right? Now that qualified lead, it needs literally no selling, right?
Back with that business value. You understand the value you have to the business. And then that starts out with, and then from there you build on it with a business case with that customer. So, I think Dennis is absolutely right. I'd rather turn that pipe, that funnel upside down and have truly tightly qualified, business case justified business prospects versus shotgun approach, having thousands of prospects versus having prospects that are you provide value to, and you provide value to. So then you're not selling. So to Sanjay's case, when you're just selling product, you end up in that vicious dynamic none of us intelligent salespeople want, and that is you end up selling price because you're selling product, and their answer is, well, so what? If you're just selling product, feature, function, they say, so what? What's the
Right.
value of my business? And that's again back to Dennis's point. Well qualified lead with information where you understand the value, and then that those leads, you don't need thousands of leads, you need dozens of good ones, right? Qualified, and that you understand the value, so you can go in and challenge their status quo and make a business case for transformational change to adopt whatever you're selling them. Again, that's all about the value. So thank you, Sanjay. That's perfect.
Thank you so much. So just because we talk about qualifying leads, are you talking about marketing qualified leads or sales qualified lead? As a salesperson, would you believe on the leads which are being shared by marketing, or would you like to take your own leads and call it as marketing or sales qualified leads?
Well,
Which one?
shouldn't it be both? Shouldn't marketing and sales be working together jointly to provide do I mean, it's a division of labor, right? And
Yeah.
together, if there's a good plan, if you marketing and sales are in sync, and Sanjay and I agree with this, that marketing and sales should I mean, marketing is there to support sales. They should be aligned to each other, measurable and performance and tactical activities around a good plan. They should be working together to create those qualified leads and build up the case for why you.
Mhm, mhm.
Right.
Which I think the lead qualification, as Steve mentioned, it's the responsibility of the enterprise. It's a responsibility of the organization. I think we tend to confuse. I'll saying that it's just that it could is the responsibility of the sales and marketing teams, right? I think I'll also add to Steve, which hopefully Steve will agree, is that there is the product also has to chip in, right? And in a pure banking world, the product could be, how do I make a deposit account to a student deposit account, right? Which is targeted towards. So I'm just trying to say that everything. So the product has to come in as well. So lead qualification, lead generation is not just about outbound calling, it's about marketing or sales, right? I think the three, and that goes back to your metaphor of the engine, right? These are the pistons, the cylinders, the crankshaft, the camshaft, right? They have to work in unison to be able to make to qualify the lead, right? So my point here would be that marketing and communication will get will the product needs to help marketing and communication understand the features and functionalities. Sales needs to be able to blend the voice of the customer and say, how do these features and functionalities actually help create value for the customer? And marketing, can you please help me communicate this value? Can you put it in a way which it is an attention grabber? Can you put the three sentences, a one-page slide, into three bullet points? And can Dennis say, you know what, Sanjay, I'm going to convert that very boring slide into this very nice graph which is talks to itself? Can you make it visual, right? So that's where Dennis comes in, and which he exactly did. He took a very, very boring income statement and he converted into a very, very easy to absorb, easy to grasp information, right? People today have very little attention, right? Very little attention, and you need to find tools and techniques to grab, communicate. I believe that this all the three parts and others, they have a role to play in the lead qualification.
Well, Sanjay, that's a great point. Kind of like the engine, transmission, drive shaft, all those things come together. I have experienced firsthand when you don't have everyone coming together, it doesn't work. And one area is sales and marketing can do their job, but then if finance hasn't priced the
True.
solution properly,
Of course.
legal doesn't understand the market in terms of what's an acceptable contract or is onerous in their view of what a contract can be, you you can be a salesperson in marketing and you've got the customer all the way to the end of the sales cycle and it won't close because you can't reach an agreement on a contract, or the pricing negotiation goes wonky because finance doesn't agree with the reality of the market, right?
Sure.
So yeah, the whole organization has to come together. Absolutely.
Hey, Vish, let me put a question as well into the mix here. So when I was coming up, the enlightened brokerage houses that I worked for, the broker dealers that I worked for, took the approach that they would have dedicated IT people working for them. While the IT people got paid by the IT department, the individuals were dedicated to different profit centers within the broker dealer.
Yeah.
Now, is that model transferable to today's world? Right now, we have people in marketing who are campaign experts, right? They've become experts in the functions of marketing as opposed to swimming buddies with guys like Sanjay and Steven to develop the more necessary expertise to articulate those messages. It's kind of like a bifurcated. So, Vish, I'm going to put that question to you because you're our marketing expert. You run an entire marketing company.
Yeah. So, the what is important, especially when you're looking at qualifying leads, you have to look at from the perspective of how have you defined your customer or buyer's persona, right? And then what is the framework? What are the qualifying elements in those leads that you have to kind of consider that. If you kind of look at also in terms of the certain frameworks, for instance, a very basic framework that I'm talking about is a band framework. Whether there's a budget, where there's a need, there's an authority, or the timeline which has been defined for a lead, that actually defines, or those are some of the elements that can qualify a lead. And the more insights that you have on that lead, better you will be able to share it with your with the sales counterpart, and would have more confidence in the leads that has been shared by a marketing team. So that is what I have actually observed when I work within this domain of sharing leads, which could be of value for the sales team and also for the revenue engine, because at the end of the day, marketing is also responsible for driving revenue for the organization.
Hey,
Well,
man,
let me put the question. Let me put the question also to Sanjay, because he and I worked together for so very long. Sanjay, do you want a marketing swimming buddy dedicated to you, as opposed to talking to the boss of marketing, telling him what you need, or hopefully he'll pull it off for you?
No, see, swim buddy is important from enabling the swim buddy. We end up expecting too much from marketing without giving them adequate enough information, right? So I think there was this comment about sales trying to become the marketing communications, and I'm trying to read here because that's not. So I think that swim buddy is somebody who also learns the trade, who also learns the segment that I'm trying to sell to, what is important for that segment. He or she doesn't have to become a salesperson, but by being a swim buddy, he or she tends to learn what drives that particular industry, what are the challenges of that industry, and then what kind of messages, and then also about channels, right? What are the channels that industry follows more than other channels, right? So they could be broker dealers who may be following the online channel or these events more than some other channels, right? So I think the swim buddy concept, in my view, is symbiotic. It creates that buddy. You are empowering the buddy in a right way to help you back, right? So that's that, in my opinion, it will be. I'll agree with you on the swim buddy concept.
Yeah. Do you mind if I put a question out there? So I wonder sometimes if it isn't how organizations are structured from accountability. Sanjay, previously you brought this up. My, I'm not a fan of matrix organizations because I'm a fan of accountability. But oftentimes, as an organization gets bigger, the matrix structure falls into place, and marketing becomes on its own island, right? And so does product and finance and legal. They're running on their own islands, and there's not alignment or accountability because of that matrix structure. So I throw that out to you guys. If you think maybe sometimes it's the structure that is problematic and the lack of accountability to each other's goals, there's not enough alignment. And because I think smaller companies like startups, I'm with the startup now, and there, because you're a small organization, there's high alignment. There isn't any debate. It's like you got the job to do, and these are the tasks. Where when you get in a bigger organization and matrix structure, everyone's just focusing on their little world, and they're not aligned to be accountable to how their job fits into the others. I mean, I throw that out as a question to you guys, if you agree that sometimes is the challenge.
I mean,
Right.
Steve,
Yeah.
from a matrix. Yeah, go ahead, Vish, please.
I have
No,
three rules. I have three rules of thumb. First one is when a marketing guy tells a sales guy that he or she is working in the industry analyst function with Gartner or whoever, I asked the sales guy to ask the marketing guy to lend him his phone and point out all the industry analysts by name that are in their phone. And if there aren't any, that person is not working very well in the industry analyst function. If they're not making phone calls to industry analysts talking to them and they're writing them emails, they're not doing the job. That's the first one. Second one, I've already told you. If a sales guy starts complaining, the first question I ask is, can I see the income statement? And if they don't have one, I go, you're not really taking this job seriously. And then the third one is when I ask marketing when they're having their frustrations, I say, let me see your phone again. How many prospects, how many targets have you called this week? Because marketing has abandoned the telephone. They have eliminated that as a productive channel for their world. Marketing never makes an outbound phone call except to get an event guy to help them put an event on. They wouldn't call a prospect if their life depended on it. And the question is, why not? It's not like those people belong to the sales guys. These are just prospects. Anyway, those are my three litmus tests. Go ahead. I think I might have cut you off.
No, I think that's
Yeah, go ahead.
yes, and
No, my point was I'll try to defend the marketing person. Being a sales guy, let me do the cardinal sin of defending the marketing person, right? See, the traditional concept of a phone call is cold call. A phone call is not a cold call, right? In fact, it's what we communicate, how we use a call to engage with the customer. A cold call can actually become a very warm call, right? Marketing calling customers as a cold call is absolutely banned. They would run away from it. But if we explain to marketing that if you want to seek inputs, guidance, how we can serve you better, I'm trying to research on how satisfied are you with on this topic. I'm trying to write a journal. I publish this quarterly newsletter. I am not here to sell you anything. I'm simply here. Would you like to write in my research newsletter? I run a podcast. Would you like to participate? Right. So the marketing we need to identify why should customer marketing reach out? What is the value of that reach out from marketing? So customer also feels that, oh, it's not just the sales guy who calls me. I'm engaged by all aspects of this organization. All aspects of this organization are actually thinking about me, thinking about my problems, wants to know what my challenges are. So that's not a cold call. That's the division of labor that Steve was referring to before. And that's where the lead or sales, you call it, it's a coordinated effort. Selling is not just a salesperson's job. It's a coordinated effort. Vish, please go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's the culture has to be fostered within the organization, especially those team members who are involved in go-to-market journey. And to your point, Sanjay, which you talked about cold calling. I have actually worked on demand center for an organization. We established the demand center, and for cold call, people who are making cold calls, there's a mandate which we shared with them. They are We have asked them not to get involved in large ticket deals, because they have to, if we see a potential of large deals, it's been handed over to sales team directly. But for a low ticket items, for a small ticket deal sizes, um, cold callers can be used, because that becomes more like a transactional kind of a conversation, and not at a conversation at a strategic level with your target buyer. So that can be, the
Yes.
approach can be amended, considering the fact that how a cold caller can add value on some of the deals. While of course, most of the times they have to work together with sales team, because the greater insights actually comes from sales team in terms of how to nurture those contexts. But when there's a low touch accounts, or accounts which are more of a transactional kind of
Mhm.
a value, then the cold caller can be leveraged. All right,
And
so I
Vish, I
think
want to point out that it's also with the product that you're selling. If your product is more a
exactly.
commodity, right? Perhaps that works. But when you're looking about a more involved consultative selling, like enterprise technology, perhaps. So you're
Yeah,
right.
cold
You're right.
calling.
Cold call is not a bad, not a bad thing based on the context.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we had a very good discussion, especially in terms of sales and marketing alignments. And so let me come to this topic of lead leakages or revenue leakage. So, where do you see the biggest leaks occur in the revenue engine? While we, of course, alignment, sales marketing alignment can be an area where, if there's no alignment, there could be a potential revenue leakage or lead leakage. But what are other factors that you would consider if you're building a revenue engine? What are those factors or areas where you see that the lead leakage can occur, and you'd like to have certain strategies to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, yeah. So I wish my experience is there's this firm, and they call it themselves constant contact, and I don't want to use the term them as a sales term, right? I think there is a revenue leakage happens. First it starts from your customers who have been with you for a long time. The reason is that you often start either taking them for granted, or you have forgotten, or you're not taking care of them enough, right? And it's not just taking care of enough from a sales perspective, dining and whining. I'm going good to go back to what Dennis said about marketing giving a call. The customer has to feel engaged 360, right? They do not just want a call coming from the sales. They want to be part of your thought leadership. They want to be receiving calls from your product management people saying that, okay, I represent product management and I just want to talk to you. I'm not trying to sell you anything new, but I'm simply trying to understand what are the ways in which I can make the product better. So I'm not nothing offering you net new. Whatever you get is part of your AMC contract. Marketing calls them, says, I'm writing this research about what are the next generation problems of it. So client engagement, as long as the client feels engaged and being addressed by all segments of the enterprise, they are less likely to decrease your business, more likely to add and get into more and more businesses. But leakage primarily will one of the key sources is. Second is expansion into new markets, right? That's another area where uh, what we feel that this story, this communication strategy, or this selling strategy worked in region A will also work in region B. So how do I align strategy by region, by line of business, by countries? I think that is important to make sure that consistently your revenue is growing and perhaps no drainage is happening from your existing accounts, and you're able to grow into the new markets.
Right. Thank you, Sanjay. I agree with what you shared. Stephen, do you have any points to add here?
No, I think that's a good summary. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Dennis?
Well, there is the classic MQL, SQL, which we're always familiar with, right? So marketing hands off 500 MQLs, 400 of them don't even get acted on, right? So leakage can occur anywhere. That didn't mean 400 were a waste of time. It just means, like law firms talk about plan B. They flood the other side with so many documents they can't work their way through them. So we can generate a lot of names that we could be reaching out to, but how interested those people might be. So stuff just ends up on the cutting room floor just because there's only 8 or 10 hours a day. I mean, it's just nature of the beast. You shouldn't want it to be that way. And so if a person's not followed up on, marketing should continue to work with that person until, in fact, they find something interesting enough where sales will, in fact, engage with that potential opportunity.
Right. Yeah. So, I agree with all of you. So lead leakages are something which, we cannot avoid. These are going to be there in the system. One way to kind of, overcome this is having a CRM in place. So there was one comment wherein, simply link the CRM to the ERP, and you'll know which customers are the most profitable and which products are the most profitable. But at the same time, it also kind of uh, gives you a view to monitor the customer engagement, the nurturing that's kind of taking place through various systems, and that could be, a kind of a process to overcome some of the lead leakages. But as you all shared, it's kind of it's not possible to have a revenue engine that doesn't have a lead leakage. Right? The revenue engine would tend to have lead leakages at various touch points. All right, Sanjay, one question, especially from the talent perspective, and there's a topic that you talked about, especially in terms of how one should empower and inspire talent who are part of the revenue engine. There's in this environment you have long sales cycle and conversion rates are too low. So that's a question to you and Stephen, both.
No, sure. No, thanks. I think so. My view may sound a little contrarian or counterintuitive. Is this again? Every call is not a cold call. Every incentive is not a sales incentive. The term, when we use this term incentive, there is always a S that prefixed to it, right? Sales incentive, sales bonus, sales commission, right? I think one way to reduce leakages also, apart from sort of adding a lot of context to the marketing team, is there should be what's in it for me. What's in it for me is not just a question that customer wants to ask you. It's your marketing team wants to ask you that what's in it for me if I support this deal for you. What is it? It's your pre-sales team also wants to know what's in it for me. The product team wants to know what's in it for me. Traditionally, we have structured sales to be paid as commissions. Pre-sales and product teams, they have their year-end bonuses, which are based on another. I think that there is a need to attach some incentive for every aspect of the organization to the deal. Even the legal guys, even the lawyers, you will see the contracts moving faster, right? Now, Steve pointed out that our common problem in all our sales deals are why our lawyers are busy. They are the busiest people. You cannot move the contract, and I'm not blaming them. Trust me, it's not easy to go through the pages that Dennis just talked about. We can't read one page. They have to read 65 pages for a contract. And now whether the deal is 600,000 or 6 million, it is still 65 pages. So how do we incentivize, right? Should incentive always be SI, sales incentive? Should it be a pursuit intensive that is shared and everybody feels? I'm not asking you to take away the variable bonuses and all that, but there should be something that is tied to every opportunity. It will incentivize. I just commented on somebody said on LinkedIn the other day, which I don't know, got a lot of hits. Is incentive inspires people to achieve the impossible, right? Incentives, they will inspire people to achieve impossible. There is nothing. I mean, we get incentivized. We work very differently when there is a meaningful incentive associated with it. So yeah, Steve, perhaps I'll let you button it
Totally
up.
echo what Sanjay is saying. I believe everyone should be measured on revenue,
Mhm.
earnings, customer relationships, market share, and then internal relationships. How do we all collaborate and work together? We should all be measured on that. I think the challenge often in sales, there's in our industries, just there's too much attrition. Right? We turn over people, and then we don't follow up with what they're working on, or we're not on top of what they're working on. There's too much attrition, and to Sanjay's point, we're not all aligned to the same goals properly, and then it be measured and followed up on. And my belief, I have a leadership methodology that the baseline of it is coaching style. Coaching, and using a sports analogy, you need on a football field, American football. You guys are more into, European and Asian soccer. Is you have to have 11 guys working together, right? 11 players all blocking. And if the blocking and tackling are not happening, well, you're not winning. So the execution is across the board. And if you have an attrition, or if everyone isn't measured on the same goals and accountable to the execution, the behaviors of execution consistently across the board, week in and week out, well, then you have a disconnect, and then the execution falters. And is it the salesperson's fault? Not necessarily, because as Sanjay pointed out, we all have to be on the same team working together for the same goals. But for that to happen, we need to be measured on it and held accountable to it, and be incented and coached to work in collaborative fashion. That's what I would say.
I agree with both of you. And in fact, just to share, as we are very close to the time that we set for the event, so we talked about I actually talked about the revenue engine flywheel, and you would see some of the elements, especially in terms of customer delight, that could be of importance and that can become an energy source. Talent acquisition, especially talent coaching and incentivizing, that's a big part of this flywheel, and that act as a fuel injector. Product, we talked about products, Sanjay talked about product a lot, so that act as a driving force. And then you have market expansion, which is the growth engine. So there are certain parameters that can be used to kind of look at how the market expansion can help as a growth engine for the revenue potential. And last but not the least is the operational excellence that is critical to kind of be seen as a friction reducer. And that is what we talked about when there's in terms of the processes that needs to be followed, either for qualifying leads or the way to monitor various touch points, whether the customer, the buying committee has been nurtured, or the information has been gathered before we approach with certain proposition to a customer. So there are certain processes that are critical to have a very strong flywheel. But thank you so much, Sanjay, Stephen, and Dennis, for sharing your insights. It was quite inspiring and informative. Very pinpoint insights that you shared with us today. Of course, the interaction, we can have. I felt that we could actually extend this interaction, the exchange of conversation, because it was such an insightful views that was coming out, and the overall, discussion was very engaging. But we have our next session for the audience. We have our next session that we plan to have on 18th of July, and we are going to continue with the revenue engine. There's going to be more in terms of igniting revenue engine X factor, which are the essential frameworks. So we can, cover some of these topics that we were not able to do so today in our subsequent sessions. So do register. This is going to be live on LinkedIn soon, but do register for this session so that you can take some takeaways from from these sessions. But thank you so much, Sanjay, Stephen, Dennis. Do you have any last comment to share here with the audience before we leave?
I learned a lot today and I took a lot of notes. I'm going to just repeat my two other speakers. Stephen said everyone needs to be measured on revenue. I think if you stop there at the end of that sentence, a lot of other things are going to fall into place, which they don't now. And Sanjay said marketing needs incentives as well. And I thought that was actually pretty profound. And I thank both of them for those insights. And Vish, your quick overview of the frameworks was really very helpful. And we'll look forward to extending on that next time.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Sanjay, Stephen, do you have any last comment to share?
No, thank you. The great opportunity. I think I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. This has been a pleasure. I always say, it's teamwork. At the end of the day, it's teamwork. And, Dennis and Sanjay and Vish's perspective is, how do you create a better teamwork? Because execution, it can't be just one group or one person. So, yeah, this has been wonderful. Thanks, gentlemen.
Right. I think that could be a closing remark, that teamwork is critical for the revenue engine. And thank you so much for your insights, and thank you participants who were there on the session and shared their comments and questions here. But we look forward to seeing you in our next session. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.